Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. We are back with the SAPI IP Business Talks. Today, I enjoy a guest. It's Dr. Plettig. He will introduce himself in a few minutes. I would like to introduce to you the format a little bit. So this is a live show, which means you have the opportunity to join us here live in the studio. So when you write any comments, questions, I can pick that up. I see that here. I can pick it up. I will pick it up and ask Jan Pettig about what you are interested in. We talk today about two things, I guess. On the one hand, it's the DIN and ISO standards, or the standards for quality in IP management. At the same time, this has a lot to do with risks and with digital transformation. And that will be our topic. So enjoy the show. And now I hand over to Dr. Plettig that he introduce himself a little bit to us. Thank you very much for being here, Jörn. Explain us, what is your background, how you came into this strange field of IP, and what are you doing right now?
Okay, thank you, Professor Wurzer, for the introduction. Meanwhile, I'm already 12 years in practice, a lot of time in private practice, as I am in my current position as site director of a sub-office of ETL IP. And when I finished my doctoral thesis, I had to publish some paper to get it written together, of course. And then I thought, shall I stick with science, become a specialist in one topic, or shall I broaden my knowledge and maybe gather other skills? And by my own motion, I found the possibility to become a patent attorney. And I read what shall I do, how are the requirements, and then I decided just to do it. And I found a good international law firm who trained me. Yeah, and then I had different stations. I was also in another law firm. I moved to industry, moved back to private practice, and thereby I also realized that the DIN standard came out almost around two and a half years ago, which I found very, very persuasive to implement an active IP management facing inter alia the digital transformation. And this is one thing why I'm sitting here and having this talk with you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. You are quite active on that. So we publish already the paper blog post with you. So maybe I show that to the audience. So when you check our website from the IP Business Academy, so then here the newest one from yesterday is a blog post from Dr. Plettig about the implementation of the DIN standard. So this is free of charge for you. I hope you enjoy that, to how Dr. Plettig shares his knowledge and experience in using the DIN standard and implementing the DIN standard. And to a certain extent, maybe as a first question, could you explain us a little bit the difference? So there is this ISO standard and the DIN standard. So how is the interplay between them? I mean, some people are a little bit confused about that, I guess.
Okay. First of all, a DIN standard is a German standard, and the DIN 77006, which is the quite young standard for an IP management with increased quality, is only a German standard so far. It can become an ISO standard, which means that it will be an international standard, like for instance the ISO 56000 series, which is already harmonized and an international standard for innovation management. But for now, the DIN standard applies to Germany. But of course, it's a guidance which can nevertheless be implemented in a US company or whatsoever, because it's a guidance, it's a neutral document which shows you what you can do, and you are quite free to realize a lot of topics. But of course, there are some requirements which must be fulfilled in order to increase quality and in order to become better. And I think we will talk about it when we come to the plan, do, check, act cycles, for instance.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much for clarifying that.
Mm.
So my first question is that the complexity in the digital transformation rises. So products become more and more borderless. Yeah, become as big as the internet to a certain extent, and the complexity is huge with such solutions um, via the IoT or when you go into the cloud. That kind of product services are heavily complex, and that forces companies to rethink their IP strategies and IP processes, especially. So let us assume you want to make an freedom to operate analysis, or so when you think about these standards, so how can these standards help the companies to cope with these complexity, this rising complexity?
Yes, this is the main reason why a standard, at least for now, makes sense to implement it, especially with the focus on digital transformation. Because we all know the stories of Amazon fighting against retail, and Amazon was very successful in it. The same applied with Uber against the taxi business, or we had the big struggle and law cases with Nokia for telecommunication technology against Daimler, for instance. This happened already. Meanwhile, we have even actual cases, for instance, Google against Sonos on speaker network-based technologies, to, for instance, regulate the volume by a specific digital business model. We have a lot of software-based inventions, and this is not stopped anymore and will be not stopped. And this means that the entire ecosystem and the entire IP landscape is changing enormously. The IP landscape is flooded by digital inventions. And the thing is, with a digital patent, you can try to claim digital business cases and especially digital use cases focusing on the customer experience. And we know, for instance, Jeff Bezos of Amazon was and is obsessive about customer experience. And if you win the customer's heart, you will be first in the market. And hereby, for instance, the case Google against Sonos on speaker technologies, in the US, there Sonos had 5 US patents, for instance, and Google lost trials and had to redesign its network technology, work around, and maybe these new features, which may allow to enter the market by Google, may be still less attractive to the customer, so the customer may decide for Sonos. And this is what all branches, each company is facing right now, if you will or not.
I think that's fascinating because my understanding of the case is that, I mean, Google is not stupid.
No.
Okay, so in terms of I would say they are very professional and they know very good to deal with IP. So the for me the key question is, why did we see that kind of infringement? And so we have this theory of digital interactions and interaction patterns. So it's a learning. So when you learn to do something digitally, so then you reproduce it because you expect that a certain feature can be used in a certain way. So today, for example, for many years we thought that these old search machines like Alta Vista or Yahoo, that were lists, and we were used to use that lists. So today we are used that a search machine has a little slot, and there you can write in your keywords or your question. And at the moment, everybody is learning that when you want to chat with a robot, with an AI robot, so you have to write it again in such a line. And so when once these interaction patterns are established by a first-time mover, first mover to the market, it is extremely difficult for others, for the followers, to change, to teach the customers that they should behave in a different way. And that could explain why we see this infringement here, which means Google don't want to introduce new interaction patterns, and so they decided to infringe in terms of the smaller Sonos maybe will not be able to defend themselves. What would you say about that assumption?
Could be, absolutely. As you said, Google may thought of Sonos as the smaller one, but this is also a good example that even the so to say smaller one is able to file and place patents disruptive to digital business cases, even affecting Google. And therefore, I will now come to your second question you raised earlier. Even in terms of FTO work, you have to leave the old paths with your search algorithm, standard algorithm, watching the same competitors year by year. You have to broaden your scope. You have to anticipate digital use cases for your business. That's why with a standard like Dean, the business model of the very own company is the basis for putting an active IP management on top, right? So also your FTO analysis has to anticipate which digital use cases can affect your business. And then in a second row, you have to anticipate on your own to get the patents first for these cases before others do. And the Google Sonos case may shows that Sonos, as the other party, got the earlier patents on it.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, down to earth, that's the point. And we have other cases too. For example, here we have an interesting case between Apple and Massimo about pulse oximeters. And there again, I mean, Google is known or quite famous for being quite aggressive with their IP and patents. And here again, the smaller company won because of the patent portfolio. I mean, that is again, I mean, on the one hand, you can say, okay, we learn that that at court, not always the bigger one wins. That's one learning.
Yeah.
But the other learning is exactly what you say. I mean, it is again a use case. It is again a very digital use case. And for whatever reason, I mean, we have this infringement here. And now we have really, let's say, uncomfortable consequences for Apple. And that is exactly what you want to avoid. And especially when you're a mid-sized company, an SME. So the smaller the company become, which is affected of such an infringement from a digital use case, I mean, that can be very, very dangerous. Really, an live or die risk when it affects your whole business model. I mean, Apple is doing much more than just this one thing, but for an SME, this oximeter could be the one and only business model, and then somebody sneaks around the corner and says, "Sorry, no, you were not aware. You made not your homework, your FTO, and here is the consequence. So you infringe, and I want you to stop your business." So that I mean, that is a kind of we don't. There's a kind of risk we don't see in the classical world for physical products. So then you have a smaller part, an ingredient, some let's call it detail, which is patented from a third party. You were not really doing your FTO exactly enough or not at all. And then, okay, a part of the product is infringing, and so I have to reconstruct it, and that is in the physical world for assembled products, that is typically not that big issue. But in a digital world with these digital use cases and business model patents, I mean, what is a business model patent? It's a patent which exclusifies the implementation of a digital business model. And when you infringe such a thing, like in these cases, and you are an SME, you are in deep trouble. Because I mean, you have to build up a new business model in as soon as possible, and that is typically not doable.
Right. Absolutely well summarized. Always, it's here applies the same I mentioned earlier, such as a in a kind of a blueprint, so to say. To boil it down, Apple had platform technology with its watches, right, in different generations, 1 to 6. But a platform like a wearable, like a smartwatch, allows tons of digital applications. And if you find the right one, like a pulse oximeter, you can affect the market for the platform even. And because now we are talking as exemplary cases about Google and Apple, one of or the most valuable companies in the world, and they are still facing the digital transformation. And this is the core message we shall place here. Nobody is safe from digital transformation and has to adapt the IP management on small scale or on large on large scale. Sorry, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I had an interview with a CTO from a company which is producing kitchen appliance in general, and they come pretty much from the hardware side. Yeah. So and then he told me, I asked him. So it's an interview series which we do at the IP Business Academy with CTOs of mid-sized companies. And the company has a very hardware legend, so they legacy. So they come from producing cutlery, knives, whatever, what you need in the kitchen. So but also home appliance, so real electronic stuff, yeah, mixer and these kind of things. And during our discussion, we came to the fact that the kitchen is has the highest level of technology in the house. Okay, so it's a very complex thing. You have Apple there, you have Amazon there with the Alexa, maybe you have BSH there with the oven. You have different appliance, you have different. A tricky thing. And during our discussion, he said, "Yeah, I know that there are different standards, and we are checking right now how we can become compatible. But so far, we did not care anyhow about patents in that field." I mean, that is a crazy answer or a crazy position. Yeah, this is that much dangerous. And when these guys bring something to the market with that attitude, I mean, the infringement is given. Yeah, and that is really I can't. I have no words for that kind of behavior. This is so dangerous. And that leads me again back to the standard, because when there is, so let us assume in such a situation, yeah, just thinking about it, they bring something to the market and have take no care anyhow about patents. So, and now they infringe, and they get an injunction, and somebody, let's say the investors of that, maybe the stakeholders, shareholders, investors, they ask, so how could that happen? That you take all the money to make the product, to bring it to the market, and then at the end, we are not allowed to sell it, yeah, because you had no FTO, you made no FTO at all. So now, what is the role of the standard here? Let us assume. So, I mean, they even don't know that a standard for quality and IP management exists. So, what would you recommend in such a situation?
Yeah. First of all, maybe if it's on that level, seek at least external guidance and become aware of such a standard and about the basics of patents and understanding IP not only as patents, designs, and trademarks, because this is also very old-fashioned, because we have to consider also copyrights, open source software, knowledge, trade secrets, everything, designs maybe for user interfaces, all that stuff. So broaden your knowledge. And then the good thing is if you come up with the standard, it has a holistic approach. There are different chapters which deal with IP awareness. For instance, raising IP awareness. This is one big topic which needs to be spread all over a company or organization for at least the departments who somehow interact with IP. This could be marketing, this could be legal, but this could be also HR, of course, because within the standard, there's often said you have to have the right personnel in the right spot, being qualified for your task, for instance, to conduct FTO search, to understand the FTO problems. If not, you are rather required to look out for such staff and train it at least in this direction. So this is the good thing. The Dean is a neutral document telling you what you can do, what you have to do, and it's so broad that it can be tailored to all the needs and to the business model of each company in each branch and of each size. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's why also the fictional company you now mentioned will inevitably become better in IP terms with this standard. And now here it comes, continuously better. We will talk about PDCA cycles.
Yes, yes. I mean, what comes into my mind is that ultimately this is a management liability issue. So when you simply ignore a standard, I mean, you can do that, but when somebody sues you, you need to prove, you need to convince a judge why you did not complain. Uh, why did you not implement the standard?
Mhm.
And that is a very, very tricky thing, especially when you have really a damage in terms of a very high infringement cost.
You have organizational duties, you have due diligence to practice, right? And the standard is there, it's in the world, and it's a valuable and really legible tool to be used by judges to have a reference. What is the good IP management standard? Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's why,
yeah,
as you said, now the damage can be numbered even. Yeah. And it's
yeah.
the deeper, the less you have a good practice within your
That's
organization.
it. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what the message is. So conformity of with the standard is extremely important, even to show to others that you take care, that
Yeah.
you fulfill what we call best practice. And to a certain extent, I mean, the Dean standard is the lowest level of quality. I mean, you could be much better, obviously, but here we have a certain lower level, what makes sense.
Mhm.
So many companies have already ISO 9001
Mhm.
conformity. Simply because this is the quality management standard, and especially OEMs take care that their supplier fulfill the standard, and so this is very, very common that you have that. To a
Mhm.
certain extent, here we have the situation you would have to explain why you are not ISO 9001 certified and conform with it. And so is it an advantage, or how does that interfere with the implementation of the DIN ISO standards?
It is absolutely an advantage because having the ISO 9001 already implemented in your company is a good springboard to put on top the DIN 77006 for IP management, because the letter DIN oriented on the 9001 but was transferred in writing to the standard to make the standard suitable for an overall holistic IP management, right? So this means a lot of organizations do have quality management departments and very, very keen persons who fully understand the 9001. And a good hint or idea would be to first contact them, tell them, look, we do have even a standard on IP level. Just walk through it, see there is a similar structure, because also the DIN 77006 has the high level structure, which is almost the same with the 9001. And then you as quality person only need professional IP input from the IP department and from legal and so on to realize the 77 standard, but maybe even external services who from the outside, under confidentiality, of course, make maybe an internal audit with your company when you implemented it for 1 or 2 years, and thereby looks at each requirement. Is it fulfilled? Can it be conform with the requirements of the is it conform with the requirements of the standard, or do we have to improve? And this allows you to may get a declaration of conformity with the standard, which is a good excuse even in cases for reestablishment of rights, if maybe sometimes or in a very, very seldom case a deadline is missed, or even during US discovery proceedings, if they were there, you have good documentation proving your due diligence and organizational capabilities.
Yeah. And I mean, also in the relation as a supplier to an OEM, I mean, that's so important. I tell the story quite often that, let us assume there's a big OEM, and this OEM, like let's say Nestle, okay, and they run machines from GEA, so just to produce, I don't know, soup in bags or whatever Nestle is producing, yeah, the next Snickers. So and then there is an supplier to GEA, and this supplier supplies, I don't know, one electrical engine or conveyor belt or some aspect of the overall production facility. So and now it comes to an infringement. So the software which is implemented into this conveyor belt has a certain intelligence, and this is infringing. So what will the patent holder do? I mean, the patent holder don't go to this small supplier for the conveyor belt. They even don't go to GEA. The infringer will go to Nestle, because Nestle has the weakest position here, because they are extremely vulnerable. Then when they cannot produce, they lose millions every day.
Right.
So it's the same thing like what we have with Continental and Daimler and so on. Yeah. So I will sue Nestle, and Nestle will pay, obviously. What should they do? But what happens then? I mean, then Nestle goes to GEA, okay? And what will GEA say? GEA says, hey, sorry, we bought that thing. So Nestle will say, I bought that from you with a contract which says that there is no infringement of third-party rights. It's free of third-party rights what I'm buying from you, this production machine. So, and then GEA says, okay, yes, I didn't know that my supplier delivered me a product, a module, a component which is infringing, maybe because of the embedded software which is in it. And then they check the contract, and what they see is also GEA had a contract which says, you deliver me the software enhanced conveyor belt functionality free of third-party rights. Okay, so what we have now is an SME, let's say with 50 million euros or 100 million euros, but Nestle has a damage of 1 billion. Okay, and at the end, Nestle can do whatever they want. They won't ever get the 1 billion damage from this SME. There's no chance. Yeah, that's simply the point. So what is missing in this chain? Okay, on the one hand, you have this huge damage along this value chain, this industrial value chain. And all the suppliers in the value chain, they trust each other, yeah, and say, okay, I have a contract. But what is the value of a contract which the other cannot fulfill when really happens something? So what is missing is a standard conformity and a declaration that the IP management from these SME is standard conform, which means they have the ability, they have the processes in place and also the resources in place, which ensures that they do not infringe with whatever they deliver to GEA. Yeah, and the OEM want that again from GEA, that GEA can control their SMEs, their suppliers, that this doesn't happen. That is the point, that the whole chain needs that, because the ones at the end of the chain have the problem, and it doesn't help that the others are liable when they are dead, yeah, when they run into insolvency and cannot pay any damages anymore.
Yes.
And that is, for me, one of the most important aspects of these quality standards, that I'm buying something from a company and I cannot look inside of the company. I don't know how the company is managed, how they manage the IP. But when I have a conformity about the STEAM standard, that helps me to develop that trust, that they know what they are doing. Yeah, so it's a signaling to others that I am able to fulfill a contract which says I do not infringe third-party rights when I deliver something to you.
Yes. That's it. And this applies to our complex world, right? We do have even more complex supplier chains meanwhile. And the standard affects each and every business, no matter what size it is, right? And already software implemented inventions are sometimes hard to analyze from the outside. So the homework shall be done within the company at each step of the supply chain.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
there are the experts, they know what they are implementing, they know the source code and so on. Yeah, that's it. And
sorry, I hear that so often, that people are shocked that an open source software can infringe patents, and that an open source license had nothing to do with that patent. So they what? Yeah, so it's a bundle of issues. Yeah, so how can a software be patented, and why does the license not? Wow. Yeah,
right.
But I mean that is just one little example what might happen when you simply have no appropriate processes in place when you develop products which have these software aspects in it. And Karin is here. They're very good. So sorry, Karin. I just choose one company. This has nothing to do with the names. But I wanted to say something in terms of everybody can understand what I mean. So then, when it comes to the question, how can we become better? Okay, so one thing is you establish a standard. Okay. I say I'm looking for conformity, and then that's it. But we have an ongoing. So IP management is nothing which is fixed. So we have again and again influencing from outside. So yesterday it was the cloud. Today it is AI. Tomorrow it is, I don't know, the metaverse or whatever. And so it is an ongoing changing topic. So what does that means? When we talk about the improvement, so there's this important PDCA cycle, so plan, do, check, act. So what does that mean, and why is it critical for the implementation of the standards?
Yeah. First of all, the continuous improvement of the standard and staying on cutting edge technologies is the main goal of it, is immanent to the standard, because as you said, that the so-called plan, do, check, act cycles are implemented a lot of times, and even on high-level structure. The entire high-level structure is structured in chapters for planning, chapters for doing, chapters for checking, and chapters for acting. And this is a very, very easy algorithm, so to say, to start each and every task within an active IP management. Namely, for instance, planning means that the management board, for instance, plans an IP strategy for the upcoming year, right? And this must be in coherence with the business model, with the actual business model of the company. So doing means that, for instance, the management board and HR have to ensure that the right people are in the right place, that if we want to, for instance, become more digital, to have a department, for instance, a technological department, right, which is doing a competitor monitoring or searching, or is looking out for which technologies are recently only published and so on, and what can we implement in our products and in our business cases, right? This is doing. Checking means, in this case, check what you have done, whether this is feasible and meeting your business model, meeting your organization. And if you see mistakes or some non-conformity, the last step of the algorithm is act, meaning get rid of the mistakes, improve yourself, start next year with a more adequate IP strategy, with more adequate staff, and maybe change different products or whatsoever. And then the next year you check again and act again. This is the basic PDCA cycle.
Yeah, got you, got you. I mean, something what I try to explain in training programs.
Hmm?
So it's about the question. When I try to explain what means the implementation of that standard in practice,
Hmm?
so then what we see out there is that we have a lack of digital patterns or patented digital developments. So it's simply a fact that these digital, so data scientists and web programmers and whatever, that these people don't see themselves as inventors. So they have even some, let's say, strange positions and perspectives about IP in general.
Right.
And so we have a lack of this kind of inventions. So,
Yes.
but what does that mean in terms of the very practical case that there is an IP department, there is a digital development, so a new app, a new whatever,
Mm-hmm.
which should come out, and then the IP department realizes that there are no patents at all from these inventors or from these R&D guys which work on these software parts,
Yeah.
and that leads to the point. So let us assume somebody invents something. So what happens then? So we are in the middle of the do. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody invented. So this is a do, and then somebody checks. This is the IP department about does that fulfill the criteria to become a patent? Okay, so is it
Mm-hmm.
new? Is it inventive? Is it
Yeah.
patentable anyhow? Is it technology and so on? But what is the source of knowledge that this inventor knows something is invented? I mean, when it comes to these digital issues, I'm discussing that with different guys and even very knowledgeable patent experts tell me, yeah, it's not so easy to say when is a simulation patentable, when is a simulation not patentable.
Mm-hmm.
This famous G119 decision of the enlarged board of appeal.
Yeah.
So now, why should we assume that an inventor, this poor, I don't know, data analyst, knows that now something is invented and writing an invention disclosure? Yeah. And why should exactly that, what this inventor is writing, why should that be the most important part of the product? What you said of the position in the business ecosystem. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, this person, this inventor just thinks something is crazy here and I solved the problem and maybe this might be a patent. So all this economic reasoning, why we need a patent, is not in this do of
Yes.
this inventor. So what is missing is the plan. So as you said, somebody should say, what do we need exclusive on this final product? And then you can start, so the plan, and then you can start with the do. So it's a demand on exclusivity for the product, and not waiting till the inventor thinks something is invented. So you explained it on the board level, but of course it can be drilled down to each and every activity.
Yes. This is very, very important to highlight. And I can really confirm, even these days, I hear software developer or guys from the IT department, oh, we do not consider patents because software cannot be patented anyways. We rather consider an open source approach because so we can interact with different developers. And this is absolutely false. Software is readily even protected by copyrights, and even more so in the United States. I'm not a US attorney. I will just mention that in the United States, copyrights are even broader on source code, for instance, even structures and different loops technologies, and so are copyright protected already. But of course, computer implemented inventions implementing a software for realizing effects to the real world are often very well patentable, and even in thinking of digital use business cases. So we as European or German attorneys learn business models cannot be patented. Per se, maybe yes, but digital use cases can. And this is such a big thing, right? And you have to ensure as a company that you are the first anticipating the business case and patent it, and not three guys in a garage in Cupertino in California doing this and then affecting your business, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the most dangerous thing is that people who think software cannot be patented, they ignore around 65,000 patents in Europe here on digital development. Because I mean, it is very simple. As soon as you upload a software on a computer, you use a technical mean, and when you then anyhow solve in the broadest meaning a technical problem, so that is per se, first of all, patentable. And yes, you use a software to solve the problem, but when it is a technical problem and you use a technical mean, where's the problem?
Right.
And I mean that opens the mind, I guess. So and of course, I mean, business methods, we don't talk about that here in Europe, but a business model which has a technical implementation, and I mean, a digital business model is realized with digital means.
Right.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be a digital business model. And so and all of the business model have technical issues. I mean, we have these wonderful series. Did they really patent it? And then we show payment systems, for example. Some of my students made a master thesis about the differences of the payment systems from Apple Pay and Alipay, and how the patent strategies are different behind that. Because at the end, I mean, what do you have to do? You have to give access to resources, to prioritize accesses, and all of that things, and that is obviously technical. But I mean, this ignorance rises a big problem. And also, I mean, the Dean standard says you need awareness, IP awareness in the company, and not at the IP department, but outside of the IP department. I mean, maybe that is another important point which should be stressed, that the standards are not about the work of an IP department. It's about the question, how is IP handled in the company at all?
Right. Can be even implemented during onboarding processes for young doctoral students or something. Yeah, because you know the saying, publish or perish, right? But it's absolutely a misconception for patent wise. So there you perish if you publish too early. So this at least can be boiled down in very brief bullet points, but explaining this to the guys onboarding and can be stressed to the IP department and IT department, so that you have the right mind from very early on, IP wise.
Absolutely. I mean, that is really, I mean, every IP department tries to do the best to create this IP awareness in the company, but that is really a hard job. Most people, employees in the company, think that IP is either boring or disturbing or I don't know what. So at least not helpful. And so it's a hard fight, and the standards help. They help to show that the board, the IP department, all the ones who are responsible made the best what they can to fulfill that. And also, maybe when you make a conformity check from outside, you have a good argument that you can say, look, not I'm as the IP department saying that we have to invest here more money to create this awareness. We need this. We for the OEM, for the customers, we need to show this conformity, and that means we have to invest in IP here. Maybe not to create new positions in the IP department, but to create awareness where it has to be.
Yes, that's it. You
Okay,
have to
thank you
manage
very much.
everything with the staff which is already there, maybe. Right.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jan Plettig, for this chat. That was very interesting, and what I see from the discussion also for our audience. So enjoy the evening. When there are still open questions or comments, we are available on LinkedIn. We will try to answer, especially Jan Plettig will do that. Thank you very much for joining us, and we are happy to see you next time in the IP business discussion here on LinkedIn. Bye bye. Thanks.
Thank you very much as well. Bye bye.